to be fair to the non-watch enthusiasts, I'm going to be more impressed by someone with a Zenith because it's, oh, you really like that piece and bought it because you like it, not because there's some hype around it. But if you're just trying to impress the average person, everyone knows the octagonal watch with the screws on its bezel. You know, so.
That's why I sold my bull of a Royal Oak. That like 70s homage that they did.
Oh, that's a great collector's item.
It was a great watch. I just realized at some point I was going to get mugged for a Bulova, and I didn't want that in my life.
That's their best advertisement ever. Hey everyone, Ariel Adams here with aBlogtoWatch Weekly. Slightly different cast of characters this week. It is myself as the host. We're joined again by Ripley Sellers and aBlogtoWatch's Sean Lorenzen. Guys, how are you doing? Starting with Ripley.
I can talk in a Scottish accent if that will make our listeners feel more at home.
I think that would make them feel distinctly uncomfortable.
Okay. So we'll wait for Rick on that. Offer stands.
Sean, any accent you're feeling like tonight?
Oh, geez. That's a can of worms that I'm afraid of opening right now. I'm just going to keep it in my normal register for the time being.
I just had a memory, a flashback of when I started podcasting about watches, Our Time with John Biggs, and accents were actually a big thing that we did. He definitely enjoyed it. There was a whole bunch of accents he would enjoy emulating. And then at some point, I think this was about a decade ago, he's like, I took them all offline. Like, we can't have people discovering those and coming to the wrong conclusions. He had like, adult children and like stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
He did not need the world, especially then, discovering him, innocently, funly, never maliciously, but he's doing like a Asiatic accent or maybe like a vaguely French accent, and we were just anticipating. Yeah. But so those episodes are somewhere, but they're officially down. Some people ask me about them, but that's the heritage of watch podcasting: silly accents.
I mean, think about how many movie studios have those same films that they have. Those were like, well, we can't pull those down. Those just exist in the ether. But it was of the era, I believe, is the term we just described those as.
Yes. And speaking of the era, we might as well talk about the first watch on the screen. Sean, this is an article by yours. The title is Time Machines, The Thrill of What If Watch Collecting with the 1966 Omega Seamaster 300, reference 156024. Why do you like this watch, and what did you write about it?
Oh, gosh. There's a dozen different reasons why I like this thing. The real crux of this is the idea of, in my mind, what if watch collecting. So there are so many different modern designs that take a classic vintage watch and slightly update it for modern tastes. You can name a dozen off the top of your head. But it's a really intriguing idea that very few people explore, to take what is an existing vintage watch and make it feel a little bit more modern without getting rid of its heritage. Which is sort of what ended up happening with this.
You made it feel more modern? How'd you do that?
Mostly through bracelet choice. There's one or two other things that are incorrect on this, that were incorrect, to be frank, when I got it. For example, that central seconds hand is supposed to be painted white and counterweighted. When I got it, it was polished metal. Other than that, as far as I can tell, it is a genuine Omega article. It's just not correct to that watch, but it does bring it more in line with the look of, for example, the No Time to Die. So this is my take on what if No Time to Die came out in the Connery years rather than a Daniel Craig movie in 2021.
Sometimes I noticed, and honestly, I'm not an expert at looking at what I call the retooled vintage watches, or someone changed something. But once in a while, when they made a change, it actually improved upon the original. The original wasn't always perfect, and someone came in with a broken hand. And maybe they didn't have the original, but they found one that matches, or they maybe painted one that matches. And so yes, sometimes these are Frankenstein because they didn't have the original parts, but people don't really talk about the fact that they had no problem aftermarket customizing them during repair, and it wasn't considered a bad thing.
No, and there is such a focus on originality and on everything has to be as it left the factory exactly in all ways in vintage watch collecting. And, you know, I've mentioned this a dozen times. I came to this through the automotive world, and very specifically through the American custom car business. That's what I grew up with. And the idea that, no, you want to have that Mustang with the same wheels it left the factory with. You can't do anything to the engine. Like, it is just not how that culture operates. So to me, this is cool. This is fun. It's not necessarily as valuable at auction as one that, you know, has been left in a drawer and never touched since 1966, but it's lived a life. It's developed its own character, and it's been able to, you know, grow a new personality that it didn't necessarily have in the 60s.
Let's talk about the difference in mindset between the collector, and I guess it applies for cars as much as it does watches, but the type of collector who is totally okay with, we'll just call it an improved version of the original, versus I don't want to even think about improvements. I just want something as close as possible to what you got when you bought it in the store, in the dealer, or whatever. These are very different people. Maybe some people are okay with both ways, but it seems like this is one of those splitting points where taste will go one direction or the other. What can we talk about the difference in the mentality between these types of individuals?
You're right. It's very different types of personality. And depending on the watches in my collection, I fall into both categories. There are some things that I've collected that I want absolutely pristine, that, you know, I've really gone out of my way to find a very original, very faithful example. And then there are times like this where I'm okay with a little bit more character and a little bit more uniqueness to it. But for the most part, I would say that the people who primarily focus on originality, primarily focus on, you know, everything has to be numbers matching, everything has to be not a hair out of place from, you know, when it left the factory. A part of that is driven by auction culture. You know, it's only original once. It will always be more valuable as an all original, unmolested watch. But part of it, I hate to say this, can be a lack of imagination. For like the average consumer, it's just, no, this is what's right. This is what I've been told is correct. And I cannot deviate from that lest I be thought uncool. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I hear you. Ripley, what are your thoughts on the matter?
I mean, it, like Sean said, it really just depends what the watch is and how I view it in my personal collection. So, you know, if I have a very, very rare old thing that it's a miracle that it has survived this long and it's exceptionally valuable in its current state, it's kind of nice to have that little time capsule. And if it's worth a ton, you know, I'm not going to devalue it. If I wanted to do that, I would sell that one, buy a different one, and then do whatever I wanted to that one. But I understand the mentality of wanting to preserve things, but those are generally the things that I don't use and enjoy in my life. I enjoy the concept of owning them, and that's about it. That mint condition thing that can only be mint once, well, I'm probably going to be kind of scared to wear it in certain scenarios, and then I'm not really enjoying the piece. So, well, I might enjoy owning it. Generally, anything I own that I wear and use, it's not going to stay in mint condition. And so, therefore, nothing is wholly on that I own. If I want to change it, I will. Often I don't care to, but, you know, for something like this, specifically this Seamaster 300, there's entire watches like the Watchco Seamaster 300s that were basically put entirely together with aftermarket parts from Watchco, genuine Omega service replacement parts. But you have examples of this exact reference where that watch didn't even exist. Not even like no part on it is original. This isn't like George Washington's hatchet type of thing, Ship of Theseus. This is like no part. That watch was never supposed to be a Seamaster. They took a three-hand movement out of a different Omega, got a case, a dial, a bezel, everything, put it on. And so at this point, there's specifically with this reference, if there was ever one to do it on, this is the one, because its history of authenticity is so speckled and scattered. And what is an Omega, what isn't? If it's a genuine watch made with genuine parts, is it genuine if Omega didn't actually make that watch? You know, you get into these weird intangibles around what it is versus what it physically is. But I have no problem customizing stuff. It really just comes down to what it is in terms of how I value it. But for something like this isn't a $100,000 watch. This isn't something where there's 8 of them. This is one where there's many like it. So to do something to it that gives it a little bit more personality, especially if it's something you like better, yeah, why not? That's like, you know, swapping out the pair of laces in the shoes or that you for a different color you like. Why not do that?
You know, Ripley's absolutely right. I was going to bring up the Watch Co. It's part of the reason why I'm very much okay with this not being, you know, 1000% original. And it really is only the hand. Everything else there is genuine Omega parts from, as far as I can tell, the same original watch from mid 1966. That said, I want to put this in context with something that, you know, a lot of Rolex fans are very familiar with and tend not to be bothered with at all, which is bezel swapping. You know, whether it's a sub or a GMT, there's an entire culture around finding a good patina on that specific bezel and then putting it onto your watch. It's not original. It might still be an original Rolex part. That even that's not guaranteed these days, but it gives it some character that it didn't have before. And most of the time, it doesn't kill the value.
Yeah, it's fashion. And I think value is a big part of it because these non-original ones, as we'll call it, which again can have different flavors of non-originality, tend to be a lot more affordable. And oftentimes, especially if it's on eBay or something like that, a watch that has a non-original part will be like a pariah. Like no one will want it. You get a good deal on it sometimes, even if it's a little thing. So that's the interesting part. I want to talk about the experience of buying the pristine, you know, factory, you know, kit versus something which has been modified. And there's maybe different approaches here, but I think one way of distinguishing it is really what you're trying to buy. The guy, it's usually a guy, who buys the watch that has some aftermarket parts potentially, I think is really a fan of the object and understands that very frequently, whether it was a watch or it was a car, something got rushed out of the factory or there was a cost decision made where they didn't use the best material or something may have been improved later on. And so I think that there's an understanding, a forgiveness, if you will, for things that needed to be patched later to be as good as possible. And I think especially in the car world, you see an enormous amount of those types of upgrades that happen in all areas of the car. And watches, people are a little bit more precious about it. But I think this goes to the other side of it, which is when you want the watch as is, what you're really trying to do is time travel. Here's what I mean by that. You're not as interested in the specific product as the idea that when that product was new, you could go and buy it brand new. Oftentimes, that was an item that came out in someone's youth and they couldn't afford it or they weren't at a part in their life where that even made sense. And so getting that original object is sort of like going back in time and living that memory, you know, driving that car that you loved as a teenager, wearing that watch that maybe you idolized on a particular person, never could have afforded. And we engage in a lot of this. Again, different collectors, it has different importance to them, but we see this a lot. And again, especially with cars, a lot of guys, it's basically fulfilling that fantasy that they had as a younger person that could only afford later. And something about getting it in the exact condition helps make that fantasy feel even more real. Any thoughts or reflections on that, guys?
I generally agree with that. Especially coming from the automotive world, the people that do go buy, you know, your numbers matching 65 Mustang, everything's perfect, you know, 289 hypo, and don't do a thing to it. Those are the ones that wanted one that when they were in high school and truly just couldn't make it happen. To me, this, and my cars are very much the same way, it fulfills a different kind of fantasy, which is, to me, what makes this interesting is the patina, is the aging, is that, you know, warm, creamy lume, and the fact that it's got, you know, a little bit of wear and tear to it. And you can go buy for roughly what I paid for this. In fact, a little bit less, go buy one of the Watchco Seamasters, which is functionally, at this point, like a 2 or 3 year old dive watch in this exact spec with, brand new white lume, super luminova, glows like a torch. Everything functions better, but that's not interesting.
Ripley, do you think that there's other good reasons to be into this, or have we sort of talked about really the broad approaches to appreciating a vintage watch like this Omega Seamaster from the mid-60s?
Yeah, I think it's just one thing for people to remember is there's a lot of different reasons why people like watches. But when it comes to your own, you have to be honest with yourself why you like that piece and why you own it. If why you own it is so you can imagine what it was like to have a Submariner in the 60s and in the era when you weren't born, you might want to keep it original. But if you like it as an object and would want to change it or do other things to it, or imagine you had it all this time and what you would have done to it over the years, don't be afraid to change it because some auction house says it's worth more otherwise. It's at the end of the day, these are just objects. We own them. It's not like we're custodians of this thing that's going to be in a museum one day. And I think a lot of people sometimes lose sight of that, thinking that their collection is one day going to be revered. That's probably not the case. Their kids are probably going to sell it when they're gone. Like that's realistically what's going to happen with a lot of the watches. This isn't like they're curating a collection where each thing's going to be behind glass sometime in the future. These are your items. You own them. You should wear them. And if you want to change them, do it. Don't really overthink it.
I'm going to say one last thing before we move on, and that is in defense of this color. Now, my presumption is that when this watch was originally new, this lume color was closer to a white, maybe like a little bit of a light green, and that it changed to this sort of sand color over time. Sean, you can correct me if I'm wrong there, but I think that's sort of generally how it is. But I think we all agree that this, again, I don't even know, it's basically like a sand color, like a beige color. Some people call it cream. I associate cream with like a whiter color, but this is a nice looking color. I think it actually contrasts better than white against black when it comes to like the human eye. And I don't care if people call it like faux Tina these days. When people make new lume that is this color, I think I don't see it as trying to emulate a vintage look. I just think it's a nice looking color.
Yeah, it's a perfectly valid alternative. Now, granted, of course, this is the real deal. That's all tritium, nothing faux about it. But I've owned, dozens of different watches over the years that had quote unquote faux Tina lume, and none of it was necessary. I didn't feel like any of it was trying to be something it wasn't. It's just a softer, slightly warmer, a little bit more vintage feeling color palette than a stark white on black, which can be very, very harsh, as you're saying, to the human eye.
Yeah, it is strange that we've drawn a line in the sand on the faux Tina thing. Like if it's tinted in a warm yellow, brown, orange, cream tone, it's like trying to be vintage, when I would argue that the rest of the watch has a far greater impact on whether or not it's a vintage inspired watch.
Yeah.
Like Sean said, if this was a Watchco and it's got like bright white super luminova, it's obviously not vintage because it looks new, but everything about it is vintage. Acrylic crystal, it's made like it was back then. It feels far more vintage than like the modern No Time to Die, which has tinted lume but is like titanium and sapphire and all of that. So I used to have the associations with vintage, but now it's just a color, unless they do the Nevada thing where it's like asymmetrically blotchy on the lume. I don't really view it as trying to be
aging is a whole other thing.
Yeah, if you're trying to make it look weathered, that's a different thing. But I kind of just view it more as a color, and one that a lot of people like. If they didn't like it, people wouldn't buy it and the brands wouldn't keep making it.
And we'll get to artificial aging a little bit later in the show. Let's see if there's anything interesting here in the most recent flyback. This is where Mike covers watches that we just really weren't able to cover very fully here. There's the Seamaster we were making fun of. Last time we talked about this, we did not have the price. And what was I saying? I was joking. It was like 2 or 3 times what it should be. $10,500.
In its defense, it has a white ceramic case, but it's also like twice the price of.
Is that in its defense?
I mean, at that point, you're overshooting ceramic IWC, which we all kind of agree is overpriced.
Well, it's a lot for like. It's also because this model is like the most affordable Seamaster among them, like the standard 300 meter.
Yeah.
And it's a great value proposition if you're buying it in its regular date displaying ceramic bezel dial format. This has completely lost the plot. You do lose the date display in the process, but wow, that's an expensive piece of Olympics memorabilia.
And, you know, the dial that looks like, again, the Microsoft Paint Eraser. The Microsoft Paint Eraser just went across it. Like, I don't know. This is the thing. It's like, I never want to give Omega too much airtime, but if we are giving it airtime, it's like, we're going to be very honest about things, you know? I mean, we've been making fun of special Olympics edition Omegas since I think I've started. Okay.
The order of words on that one was a choice. Can we just also please contrast the lovely Seamaster we were previously just looking at with the current one? Just it's a radical departure where this brand has taken this watch over the decades.
This is why I collect vintage. At the end of the day.
This is how much management can affect things. Okay, speaking of, well, I don't even know what topic this falls under. Maurice Lacroix, who used to have, I guess, their master collection, or maybe it was the masterpiece collection. I can't really tell what they used to call it, but when they made their own movements, I think, actually, it still says masterpiece on the dial there. Can you tell that? So it is masterpiece. They just changed it to master, not master. Okay, that's funny. So I don't know if this was a new movement or an old one, but this is, again, I'm guessing this is supposed to be, again, this is $8,600. I believe, I could be wrong. This is one of their in-house made movements, though not entirely sure here. Highly skeletonized style. It's really just a day date. I did not write about this. I don't even know if it's an automatic or not. We're just looking at one picture right here. I guess, you know, it's okay in some ways. I'm not super excited about it. But the question I have is, how much longer are companies like Maurice Lacroix can still think that this large amount of people out there want skeletonized dials? There's a market for it. And I agree there's this initial, like, it grabs your attention. But I just find it hard to believe that there's a watch lover out there that just wants to see so much through the dial as opposed to the dial every day. And I want to know your thoughts on just how much longer this trend will last.
I mean, on my side, I think, again, it takes all sorts. There are definitely skeleton enthusiasts out there.
Have you met them?
Okay, that story. Sorry. What I do see happening, though, is brands like Maurice Lacroix probably have a longer shelf life on this sort of trend than brands at the higher end, because this sort of watchmaking still, especially as someone who's like a relatively fresh enthusiast, maybe a couple of years into this, it's still an aspirational look when the more experienced or the more well-heeled collector has kind of been there and done that. So the price point at which Maurice Lacroix operates, this isn't a bad business move in my mind.
Well, I think the price point for this one is a bit sticky. I'd agree with Sean that, like, the higher up you get, the more fickle. Granted, everyone applauds the open work thing that's gorgeously hand finished and, you know, showcases its, you know, its mechanics because there's meaningful mechanics to showcase. But when it's a simple watch in terms of its complications, I think this almost encroaching upon 10 grand is kind of tough, because for the more green collectors who want that aspirational look, this is a ton of money to spend on a watch. And so for a few grand, maybe that might be a better buy for them. But by the time someone's dropping nearly 10,000 on a watch, they might want something that isn't so much aspirational from a visual perspective, and it is more from like a brand perspective, like getting themselves a Rolex or something like that.
This has always been some of the more interesting watches that come out of Maurice Lacroix and the industry in general. And I have a soft spot for these watches, but I always think that it's sort of the watch that you'll inevitably get a great price on, because a few years down the road, like, there's going to be a used one that no one is really that interested in because it's never been that popular. But it's a weird demographic because it's for the type of person who definitely reaches up for this, but does not want to reach up a little bit more for like a used of something that's a little bit more maybe popular. So I find this fascinating because a person that buys this type of watch will agree, clearly loves watches. This is not a poser. This is not just like what you'll call like some luxury lover. So they make a specific decision to get something which is, we'll call it horological, but also like under the radar, very much an underdog. They're not super obsessed with maybe aesthetics. You know, this is probably not the most wearable watch in terms of size. Usually these used to be big. Maybe they're smaller now. Because there's all these asymmetric elements on the dial, you're not going to be able to read the time as easily as something else. You know, like having the day date is nice, but it's not necessarily what you would call like the most commonly prestigious of complications. It's a very niche watch, and I love these things for that. But I also don't have the ability to picture like what store is this sold from and who is the person who's wearing this. I would love to see these worn out there, but this is part of the mystery I love about this industry. It's like, who's the guy for this watch?
I do think it's important that they're kind of pushing the envelope more lately this year and last as far as what they're doing with their movements. Like, you can't just be the Icon brand with like Icon, like the model, and using Solitas and expect that to be a long-term plan for success. It's important to start developing additional lines and verticals that people can get interested in and start building that story. Otherwise, you'll just become AP. So I think it's important that they're doing this. This is quite a bit more expensive than someone picking up like a three-handed like Icon automatic or something like that. But I want them to keep doing this. Sean and I saw some prototypes of these more complex models last year in Geneva, and in my opinion, it was a really good sign of health for the brand. So I want them to keep doing it. As you said, I want to see what type of buyers end up buying these, but I think this is a really good sign for the brand, and I want them to keep doing more with this concept.
Do you think that this watch, I'll just get back to the picture really quick, would do better, as well, worse, if it just had a solid dial? An attractive dial, maybe not a boring dial, but, you know, a solid dial.
Worse.
No, I think the skeleton is part of the draw there.
Yeah.
And especially, like, I think what's justifying the price there, at least as far as like Maurice Lacroix's marketing people are concerned, is the fact that this is a skeleton retrograde big date. Those are all three very big words, especially as a collector who hasn't had much experience with complications or with exotic designs.
It's weird how the industry is obsessed with certain words, yet they put so little effort into naming their products.
I mean, we've had to lengthen the titles, the character count for the titles on the website of aBlogtoWatch because some of these names are so long that it leaves so little room for anything else. They can come up with something a bit better. Same goes for Land Dweller. That's not long. It's just not great. But I think for the Maurice Lacroix, I think part of the reason why they did it is, as Sean mentioned, to showcase these complications. If the date just appears through a window, you don't necessarily get to see the large open worked gear thing through and how it actually works to display it through the separate values. Same goes for the retrograde hand. So I think they're doing that to showcase that, hey, this movement has more going on than what you're used to from us. Take note. And as we see with other brands, sometimes new technology is unveiled in a skeletonized form to showcase it, like the Breguet Experimental 1. And then I'm sure we're going to see other movements and watches with that same technology, but in a less flagrantly mechanical presentation of it. So maybe we'll get a solid dial one later, but I think right now they're really trying to promote the fact that the movements in these masterpiece ones are not just your standard off-the-shelf Solitas.
Well, we wish them well. I'd like to see more of that stuff from Maurice Lacroix. It's I'm glad that the master or masterpiece. I love how they go with both names now. We'll see how that goes. So, since we had our show last week, we published information on a few new Zenith watches. There was the not so aptly titled LVMH Watch Week because there wasn't much of an actual event. There was sort of a series of launches and things like that were coordinated. But that's okay. We come to expect that. And we've talked about some of those watches, but I want to talk about the Zenith one specifically because we got to see hands-on of most of those. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we're mainly seeing, color and material swaps, or was there sort of anything really new?
The Defy Tourbillon is the completely new. I mean, new within context of new. They've had a Tourbillon Defy. They've had a skeletonized Defy Skyline. Now this is the first skeletonized Tourbillon Defy Skyline.
And there it is. Again, it's easy to make fun of this segment. Gold bracelet watch, open skeletonized dial, tourbillon. It's almost a stereotype of something you can make fun of because it's a whole sort of archetype onto its own. With that said, when you put these on, and maybe you have a difference of opinion, gentlemen, but it makes you smile. Like, these are fun watches to wear. If you can afford it, a gold watch on a bracelet with some angularity and a tourbillon on the dial, especially a 5 hertz tourbillon that's, I guess, a little bit more special. It puts a smile on your face. $103,700 smile. This looks to be almost more expensive than some of the Audemars Piguets that I remember. But then again, I imagine their tourbillons of this ilk are even more expensive now. Is this a deal at this point for $100,000? I don't know.
Within the context of solid gold integrated bracelet, tourbillon, skeletonized things, yeah. The AP version would cost you a lot more, and it's debatable how much more joy it might bring you unless you're really just about the AP brand name. But the same goes for the regular Defy Skylines, like the ceramic ones. You want to get like an AP ceramic skeleton? Oh boy, that's going to be a very expensive watch. Zenith's got you for a modest 5-figure price. So, I mean, not a value proposition. This costs $100,000+, but like for within the context of like rich dude stuff, like, yeah, I'd buy this before other ones.
Yeah. One of the things that the Defy Skyline in general, going down even to just the basic, 3-hand in steel, that series is so good at feeling expensive. And that's different from feeling luxurious. It's different from feeling, trendy or avant-garde. But every single time I put on a Defy Skyline, whether it's like, again, the simplest, sub-seconds or something like this, I immediately felt wealthy, which is a big part of what draws people to luxury watches in the first place.
No, that sounds like mission accomplished for Zenith.
It is, and I think I say it in either this one or the black ceramic one. Every time I see one of like the Defy Skyline skeletons, I always like it more than I did when I just saw it in photos. They feel really nice. They wear nicely. They do a good job on the finishing. It's not sharp, but it's angular. They do a good job with the line. So while people might be at integrated bracelet watch fatigue, just due to the years that it's been going on, this is a really compelling one within the context of like high-end brands. And as we've mentioned on previous episodes, Zenith's output of like 25,000 some watches a year is well below many other brands. So while everyone knows them, the likelihood of you running into someone with the exact same watch is less than like, I don't know, your Steel Jumbo or whatever.
You really don't see many out and about. And when you do, they're usually El Primeros. Like, these are still pretty rare watches. And obviously, the $100,000 skeleton tourbillon is playing in a different league, but for the Defy Skyline in general, it's at an extremely competitive price point. Like you're saying, we've all seen so many different integrated sports watches over like the past half a decade, really, at this point, maybe a little more. But that space of like 7,000 to 15,000 now. You know, sub Royal Oak, you know, coming in below the overseas, coming in below the heavy hitters. You've got this, you've got the Alpine Eagle, you have, you know, a few other contenders here, all of which are phenomenal watches. And are delivering in some ways far better value for money than, you know, the standard answer of Royal Oak or, you know, overseas or Nautilus if you've really got the cash.
Yeah, and I think another thing about the stigma, there's no stigma with Zenith that's bad. You know, obviously this is a giant gold flagrantly luxurious watch, so it screams I'm wealthy. But if you see someone who picked up any Defy Skyline, the first thought is not that person's a hype beast and they bought it because X, Y, or Z celebrity had it. You almost implicitly know that person genuinely likes watches, and it's almost the antithesis when you get to like the hype beast Royal Oak models. Like they probably couldn't tell you what it does, what movements in it, anything. It's like I bought this one because Ryan Reynolds has it or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Today, with the price of gold where it is and the perceptions around gold, is wearing a solid gold watch on a gold bracelet, is it good taste? Is it a flex? Is it unwise? What do you think is the mentality out there right now?
Depends where you live, right? I guess that might be a big one. There's certain environments where I think it would be uncouth to rock this or dangerous for your own health and limbs. But
the aBlogtoWatch team officially does not want to tell people to wear gold watches out of fear of the consequences of what will happen.
But like, if you're an attorney, this is not official legal advice. We need to preface this. Like, don't do this specifically because we said to do it.
Oh, but wearing a gold watch feels so good. I mean, this is the time to wear it. If you can afford it. But look, if the rich are getting richer, it's not a surprise to be able to have a gold watch and a gold bracelet. Yes, you don't want to show it off to people who will become overly jealous, but I wouldn't say it's as inappropriate as may look on the surface.
No, and there's so many like fake gold watches out and about. It's not like the dude in the ridiculous supercar where it's like, well, they don't make a fake one of those, you know, like you see a gold watch on someone's wrist. It could be like a gold Michael Kors or whatever. For all
I was also thinking Michael Kors.
Honestly, like, I think the real wealth flex these days, even with the price of gold, there aren't too many people that wear gold as the flash choice, at least from the people that I see. That's really moved to ceramics. You know, if you've got the blue QP Royal Oak, that's, you know, huevos grande. That's somebody who's flashing some money. But
so, so let's talk about
the ceramic Defy Skylines.
So we got a few. We got this one's black. It looks like it has almost a grayish tinge there. I'm not really sure, but
the lighting was very warm.
Oh, yeah,
very warm. Okay, because Ed's whole thing in the title is stealthy black, and I'm like, that looks very brownish.
No, I had to pull so much yellow out of my photos.
Okay.
Not this watch, a different black ceramic watch. It was warm. It was warm in there.
That's a lot more true to the actual color palette there. There's like a little bit of a smoky, you know, warm gray, but that's about it.
These really are kind of growing on me. It's a higher price point than I remember these watches, but I feel like all Zenith needs to do is make more and more Defies and they become increasingly good ideas.
Oh, yeah. And for what it's worth, this is like the spec that I would want. If I had money, no object, go buy a Defy Skyline. You know, it's an El Primero movement. It's a chronograph, and I'm a geek for chronographs. That black ceramic case really shines well. It's a good size. It's a good weight. Like, everything about that just feels right.
Yeah. This is one where when I saw the photos when the press release before we got to see them in person, it's very much like, oh, ho hum, okay, another Defy Skyline. This one's chronograph, black ceramic, whatever. But this one's, again, really nice in person. This was one that I was not looking forward to seeing. It made sense that they made it. But this was one of my favorite ones that I saw that day during the preview. And this is sort of like the answer for anyone who wants the Hublot Big Bang but doesn't want the Hublotosity of it or all the skeletonization. You get a lot of kind of the similar design cues, angularness, integrated bracelet or rubber strap. But then it's a Zenith, so it's a bit more restrained in how it presents these kind of similar hallmark LVMH brand details.
So I want to say something about Zenith, and this is not a derogatory statement about Zenith, but Zenith has always been at its best, at least recently, when copying another company. Okay, whether it's Rolex or Audemars Piguet or Hublot, they've really always been their best when copying someone else. Maybe themselves from the past once in a while, but there's not modern stuff that Zenith makes. They just do good homages, and again, it's not a bad thing because they've always done it really, really well. When I see this watch, I very much think Royal Oak chronograph. Probably Royal Oak offshore chronograph to a degree. And I remember when a Royal Oak chronograph cost this amount. By knowing that the Zenith is now close to $24,000, I am somewhat apprehensive at thinking what the equivalent Audemars Piguet costs today. I remember the last time I wrote about an Audemars Piguet ceramic chronograph on a strap, not a bracelet. It was, I think, over $60,000. And it's just interesting how all these prices kind of move up. And so this was the price that seemed high not too long ago. And now this is seen as you like watches and Zenith makes a quality product. May not be the most original, but it's not a direct copy. Look, they got stars on the dial. This is a good argument to make, but Zenith rarely puts their price the highest because they're not trying to create a new market segment. They're trying to sell to an existing market segment. So do either of you guys know what the equivalent Audemars Piguet costs today?
Are we talking actual MSRP or street value? Because those are two very different numbers.
MSRP. What's the MSRP of a black ceramic Audemars Piguet chronograph?
Oh, geez. I don't know if they sell one in black right now either.
I don't know if they'll tell me the price if I ask.
Yeah.
Oh, they've gotten that weird? Oh, boy. I opened up a whole can of words there.
I'd have to dig for that.
I mean, Zenith's whole slogan should be in quote, we'll sell you the watch.
Oh, yeah. You can come in today and buy one.
It's stock now.
Yeah.
It's a remarkably interesting company, but you have to understand so many layers. It's like the homage company that maybe makes less units per year than the watches they're actually homaging.
Oh, I mean, that's not even a debate. AP is a volume brand these days. It's hysterical.
Yeah, but usually it's the other way around, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of, it's literally more exclusive than the Royal Oak. Okay, well, kudos, Zenith, and hopefully that looks a little bit more black in person. Okay, so let's go on to another weird watch. This is an early celebration of the 250th anniversary of the United States. What a time to be celebrating such an honor. Yeah. The real anniversary is obviously in July.
$88,900 for a black ceramic Royal Oak chronograph and that, granted, that does come with the black ceramic bracelet, as does that Zenith. So, this is kind of apples to apples, although...
So you could buy 4 of the Zenith.
Yeah, and Zenith gives you those straps, too, so you do get the rubber straps with it. There's the quick release system.
Real talk here, the Zenith has a better movement. I will put myself on the line and say that. AP's chronograph movements have always been flimsy. They've always been a little bit behind the curve technically versus an El Primero.
But they just spent so much money on their new manufacturer in Le Brassus.
And I'm sure it's wonderful.
And I think you also get more
have
water.
A Zenith chronograph than an AP chronograph.
You also get more water resistance. The AP only has 50 meters.
Oh yeah, so you can actually and there's another layer of flexing too, is you can jump in the pool with your Zenith
and be like, "What? The service center won't treat me poorly. I won't even need to go. But if I do go there, I will be treated nicely at this one."
So what is the casual argument for why you should spend multiple times the amount on the Audemars Piguet. Is there an argument to be made? I mean, it doesn't seem like a good argument. It seems if Zenith is still making money at this price, and we know LVMH is not exactly known for their discount pricing, okay? Especially not these days. If they're still making money at this roughly under $24,000 price point, what on earth is going on at Audemars Piguet? Do they have
it's
like a
keeping up
tapeworm?
with your social scene? That's what you're doing with the Audemars? Is everybody
what social scene is that?
Well, it's your jet set trust fund, everybody got a new Ferrari at 16 kind of crowd. And if you show up with the Zenith there, you will be laughed at.
What will they say? Uh-oh, do you actually like watches?
Yeah, no, it'd be some variety if you bought the store brand. But that's not me personally. Like I said, I'd rather have the Zenith. I'd rather have
Are there
four of them.
bad store brands these days even? I don't think Tourneau still makes watches.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's bad store brands in the world of watches. I still buy some really terrible bottom shelf cereal from time to time. That's worth getting the name brand.
Store brand cereal. Okay.
Yeah, no, that don't work. You get real Fruit Loops or you don't get Fruit Loops.
Store brand underwear has a very short lifespan.
And yet Zenith is not store brand. There's no Zenith store. Oh, well, there is technically a Zenith store.
Yeah, there's ADs. The other thing that I would say is sort of in favor of the AP is not even necessarily resale value these days. It's ease of resale. If you're in a place where you really do need to get your money out of that watch in order to do something, you're going to spend some time trying to unload the Zenith, and the AP you could do tomorrow.
But you have to spend so much more to get the Audemars Piguet in the first place.
Oh, true.
Yeah. If you had potentially impending financial concerns, maybe the $90,000 black ceramic watch was not a wise purchase. But yes, it is more liquid. The AP is that. And to be fair to the non-watch enthusiasts, I'm going to be more impressed by someone with a Zenith because it's, you really like that piece and bought it because you like it, not because there's some hype around it. But if you're just trying to impress the average person, everyone knows the octagonal watch with the screws on its bezel. So
that's why I sold my bull of a Royal Oak. That like 70s homage that they did.
That's a great collector's item.
It was a great watch. I just realized at some point I was going to get mugged for a Bulova, and I didn't want that in my life.
That's their best advertisement ever.
Yeah, do you guys remember that Hublot campaign from 2010 with Bernie Ecclestone?
Yeah.
See what people will do for a Hublot. We could do a see what people will do for a Bulova that looks like an AP.
Make it like a joke, like, you just went to jail for a Bulova.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone cares about our country's little, quarter century birthday, quarter millennium birthday, I guess leave it up to the Swiss in Geneva to they're never the ones to send the first card. So many of the cards I get for the holidays from Europe come like in middle January. So the fact that they're so ahead of the curve here, what do you think the goal for Laurent Ferrier was in release? They just wanted to they're like, 2026 is here. We want to do it.
Yeah, they want to get ahead of the 250th anniversary
swatch
rush. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because there's going to be a bevy of them.
I wish it was a different year, right? I wish there was just more people excited about celebrating.
I wish we had more to celebrate right now.
Or maybe they released it because they're not sure there'll be a 251st. So there's. It does seem curious. I think someone in the comments was like, "So why are the Swiss brands celebrating the American?" It's like, well, Breitling does that with American cars. Maybe they just really like our, historical legal documents.
Well, and to be fair, like whoever's buying a limited edition Laurent Ferrier can afford to go celebrate the 4th of July at the drop of a hat in Geneva.
Yeah, I just don't know. That's what I want to. How does the buyer of this watch personally celebrate this occasion? Do they hire someone to hand paint a forgery of the Declaration?
My guess is they're celebrating at Mar-a-Lago.
Oh. So this is an ironic watch.
I don't think there's any irony in it. I just think they're going to sell quite a few of these to the Mar-a-Lago crowd.
Maybe like National Treasure fans, big enthusiasts of that Nick Cage movie.
Would that have to do with the Declaration? I know there was some.
He stole the Declaration of Independence.
There's a treasure map on the back.
Yeah, he stole the Declaration of Independence so he could find the treasure map. And I forgot to say spoiler alert, I guess. But yeah, you know, we all know how this one ends up.
I'm such a Nick Cage fan. I can't believe I missed that one. I know the movie. The plot seems so silly. I never saw it. There's like 2 or 3 of them. There's multiple though?
Oh, yeah. Your next plane ride, Ariel. Look, buckle in and sit tight.
Yeah.
You've got
like that's on the entertainment system.
Well, and they end up doing one in Buckingham Palace. Like they really go places with it. It's a fun series.
Is Nick Cage in all of them?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. All right. I will watch anything that man is in. I just will. So the base watch, I can never remember if it's the Classic Origin or the Origin Classic. Both of them sound equally plausible. Okay, Classic Origin. We hadn't written about this one before. This is Laurent Ferrier's most simple timepiece, and it's much more simple than the other ones. Time only, but really nothing fancy in the movement, no special regulation system or anything like that. It's very pretty. I think what's interesting about it is the fact that the movement is hand-finished, but then it's given this dark gray coating, and some of the finishing is a little bit more industrial. So you have this combination of hand finishing, but also looks, again, very industrial, like a tool, which is intentional, which was a nice choice. But what do we think about this base watch here? I think it was about 39, 40 millimeters wide. It's not my, it's a very pretty watch. Yeah, 40 millimeters wide, 10.7 millimeters thick. It's just as smooth as all the other Laurent Ferriers. What I mean is, if you run your fingers over it, you're not going to feel sharp edges. It's supposed to be very smooth. But I guess the question, it's still $44,000. Is it too simple, or is it a nice entry level for the Laurent Ferrier brand?
That's a tough call. Is it the Laurent Ferrier that I would go buy if I had Laurent Ferrier money? No. But every single Laurent Ferrier that I've ever had the pleasure of handling has felt genuinely special. And even if it is a simple sub-seconds with a whole lot of text on the dial, I, sight unseen can tell this will feel exquisite.
In the future, when people make fun of watches with too much text on the dial, is this a meme to reference?
Yeah.
Yeah, this
absolutely.
one just told all of them to hold my beer. 3-line, 4-line, 5-line. This is the whole Declaration of Independence. It's like, I often say in hyperbole, yeah, they printed the whole Magna Carta on the dial. Well, this is the Declaration of Independence. So the only place that's unadorned is the subdial. So this is a very specific buyer, but I like the base model itself. It's quite expensive for a three-handed watch, but at the same time, Laurent Ferrier is an expensive brand. But I think for kind of the space that they play in, you do sort of need those traditional, classic, timeless, if you will, designs. Yeah. And I think this hits it on the money, this edition notwithstanding.
To put it a different way, Laurent Ferrier has always struck me as the brand that people go to when they get bored with Longa. When you need something a little more Longa than Longa.
I can understand that a little bit. Yeah. I see them as being a little different. I think you can own both, but Laurent Ferrier still seems like the more exotic choice.
Definitely.
Okay, so in the future, that's why I want this watch to be referenced. So I think it's just called the Classic Origin 250. So not even a long name. They somehow kept it really short. But if you're ever complaining about too much text on the dial, especially in the comments on the blog to watch, just reference this article or a picture of one of these and be like, well, remember the amount of text that this one had? Or you could alternatively look at the back of many of those Grubel Force watches that, had all that like text engraved on it.
Oh, yeah. Where it was like motivational poster quotes, like
it's War and Peace or whatever goes on.
Hang in there, baby. But
you remember when they, and this was early on, it was kind of naive of them, but they never wanted us to show it. So every time we take pictures of it, they're like, could you pixelate it? Could you blur it out? Because this message is for the customers only. We couldn't possibly have the lay people out there reading it. And they were like, no, please do it. It's part of the promise. We say only you that spends this amount of money can read the message from our master watchmakers. And I would just sit there and roll my eyes over and over again. But like, they were insistent for the long time. So if you go back, I'm sure you'll see some of the Grobel 4C ones where either took the picture out, there isn't one, or we tried to blur it or something like that. But each time I did it under protest.
What they should have done is include like a secret decoder and just written it all in like a cipher.
Why did they just give one to Nicolas Cage and be like, Nick, just do something. You like watches.
Well, I mean, why didn't Grobel 4C just make a press sample that instead of having their normal array of inspirational quotes and positive hymns or whatever's on it, just one that had other text like
Lauren Ipsum.
Lauren Ipsum. I just want one of some famous lines from Nicolas Cage. Just have a bunch of, it doesn't matter, in any order, just random lines from movies, classic Nick Cage sayings. Have those on the dial. That's the one that I want to see.
I feel like that could be an Awake Ellie.
Maybe. I just want to drag Mr. Cage into this conversation somehow.
What about instead of that Patek that celebrates the, with the man himself on the dial, we had Nicolas Cage's profile?
Well, we have the Jacob and Company version of that. We haven't written about it yet. Well, it hasn't been published yet. I have written about it. But let's wait till that comes out for that conversation. Because I feel that's a fun one, but it's incomplete without the God of Time.
Without that side of the conversation, yeah.
Yeah, and that was also done for his birthday. I feel like the entire point of that watch was the Patek was dumb. We can do it better. And then we made fun of the Patek in Time Stone, where we're basically saying it looked like a tombstone, and that was the April Fools from last year, or the year before. It all blurs together for me. Okay, let's see if there's anything else from the last week that we want to talk about before we move on to we'll call them two special topics. I think, given the time we have, let's talk about those. I wanted to, will quick mention of the marathon. For me, when I was seeing that Seamaster 300 from the 60s, something like this seems like a modern version of that. The white hasn't changed color yet. Maybe it never will. But when I look at this type of marathon, I just see a continuation of that trend. It just looks like, an evolved cousin of what that watch was in a lot of ways. And obviously there's a bazillion of them. But this is a pretty handsome marathon. This is the white dial, the Arctic edition of the OSAR-D. And if you're not really quite sure what looks different about this marathon, compared to many of them, it just has traditional lume and not tritium gas tubes. That's probably what's the most distinctive thing here. But I thought this was a pretty one. They make this 41 millimeter wide size and a 46 millimeter wide size, which I actually want to wear. But just before we move on, any quick thoughts about this particular marathon OSAR-D Arctic edition?
You and I are at total different sides of the marathon diver style spectrum. I've been toying with the idea of picking myself up one of the...
You want a 52 millimeter?
No. I want the 36. The 36. You want the 46. 46 is like a war shield for me.
It looks cool. It just looks cool.
Oh, I like the 36 ones. It's so chunky and small, and I like those. But this makes a lot of sense. Obviously, Marathon's thing is tritium. That's one of most watches have it, but not everyone wants it. Some applications it doesn't lend itself well for it. Everyone knows tritium always glows, but it doesn't glow especially bright. So if you walk into a dark environment, unless it's pitch black, sometimes it's harder to read it than a regular watch. The benefit is you can wake up at whatever time at night and it's still going to be glowing the same brightness. But for applications where it doesn't need to just glow perpetually, but needs to glow really bright for a shorter amount of time, this makes a lot of sense to have in their lineup. And it looks so intentional. This is not a pretty watch, but it looks, it's super legible, very functional. It clearly was designed to be more of a tool than some thing people are going to fondle over and critique the design of. But that, in my opinion, that's what makes it all the more interesting and cool. It's purely intentional and functional. Look at that lume. Yeah.
Yeah, and the lumes, it's pretty good lume. They have, I think, their own formulation. So that is $1,800 for that particular Marathon 41 millimeter OSRD Arctic Edition. So we have two remaining topics. The one topic we want to discuss that we don't have pictures in front of, but we could probably find a recent article, is Tudor. And I thought it might be interesting to just talk a little bit about if Tudor is a company that's going through kind of a tough time right now. I am of the opinion that Tudor is going through a bit of a tough time right now. And I think that you look at, I mean, again, the watches are fine. There's nothing wrong with the watches. They might be a bit boring. In fact, maybe they're too boring. But this is the company that's supposed to be the exciting kind of like, not younger sibling, but I don't know, more athletic cousin of Rolex. Right? It's supposed to be agile. It's supposed to be trying new things that they always talk about. Oh, we have all these fancy facilities. We went to the Canisi factory. And Rolex has been doing really good. Rolex has been selling a lot. They've been building a new factory and stuff like that. And that is honestly very fantastic for Rolex. Yet you see sitting on their hands-ism from Tudor in a way that somehow shocks me. And I'm wondering if you guys agree that in a lot of ways, Tudor seems to be somewhat asleep at the wheel.
I don't know if it's asleep at the wheel or needing to figure out what's going to be the next direction. When they reemerged, it was, you know, a lot about the vintage reissue pieces. The Black Bay became what the Black Bay's metastasized into way too many watches over the years, but they kind of had success with that and kept playing the hits. But in my opinion, Tudor is the brand that can fail where Rolex can't. It's supposed to be the more adventurous, experimental one that can try new things. I mean, Tudor's made a lot of ugly watches over the years during the dark years of it.
I will second that.
Yeah. The Iconaut, absolutely heinous. But, you know, that's part of the charm of Tudor. It's not the brand of Rolex that's been making the same watch for 75 plus years. So, for a brand like Tudor, I think it's great that they make these vintage reissue pieces that caters to the market of people who wanted a vintage Cimarron or whatever. But I also think it's important for them to keep pushing the envelope, right or wrong. I loved the North Flag when it debuted, when they first launched. And we've sort of seen them taper away from those modern pieces. Yeah, there's the Pelagos, but I don't really know if that's enough for me in terms of what I want to see from Tudor. I don't want to just see vintage pieces. I don't want them to be the heritage brand of the Rolex umbrella. I want them to be like the more exciting younger sibling. And it just feels like they're maybe languishing, but not because they're asleep at the wheel, but because they're not sure what the next chapter of Tudor is going to look like. So they're just keep doing the old stuff.
They don't seem to have any idea what to make next.
Yeah, it's unfortunately basically the whole reason that Tudor was revived, 12, 13 years ago now, is that Rolex has been a victim of its own success. The watches are so iconic, so beloved that you really can't change them drastically without open revolt. The problem is now the Black Bay is starting to encroach on that same level of success, at least among enthusiasts. And so you kind of have to keep playing those hits as Tudor. Like, I agree, there should be room within the Tudor lineup for more experimental pieces like the North Flag, more actually modern designs, more pushing the envelope. But it has effectively become the heritage brand for Rolex, and especially at a time when Tudor's market segment is feeling the squeeze a lot more than Rolex's is, just due to the state of the economy. It's difficult for Tudor leadership to kind of change course. It would be a frightening thing to abandon what is working. Now, I'm a heritage guy at the end of the day. I love vintage pieces more than most new pieces. There's a lot of other parts of the Tudor back catalog that get neglected in favor of the Black Bay and to a lesser extent now the Ranger. There's a lot of cool chronograph stuff that's just sitting on the back burner that should see the light of day. You could do more with like the Prince nameplate in general. But even then, you need more creativity.
One of the things I've never understood about Tudor is that in some weird ways they operate like a micro brand. Like they don't really appear to try to market it all like new designs. They're like, oh, well, if the market doesn't immediately want it, we're not going to explain why they should like it. We'll stop making it and try to find, I don't know, something they already immediately want. I've never really seen Rolex care about that. Rolex is happy to come up with something new, especially in the past. They'll explain why it's a good idea and why you should be into it, and they'll have some patience. And especially on the technology side, Rolex has been very big about saying, no, this is technology you're going to want. Maybe you don't want first generation, but by the time we put it in a fourth or fifth or sixth watch, you're going to want it. I mean, think about Oyster Flex, the strap technology. That was the weirdest, most insane thing. There was like 15 different strap sizes, and it was confusing, and it was some synthetic material, and it wasn't natural rubber, and it had wings on the back, and we were like pairing it with gold watches, and it was controversial at the time, and in the way that created conversations. And then Rolex was like, no, you'll see how nice it is to wear our gold watches on this thing, and they were right. And then when Tudor came, it's like, yeah, this is going to be our experiment place. Like we can play with ceramic and colors and designs and weird stuff. And there was this sense of promise. But then they all backtracked. Like they don't want to spend a penny in R&D. They don't want to have to spend 10 minutes trying to explain to anybody why they want something they don't already want or teaching them anything new. And so in that way, it just appears to be some type of like Instagram audience pleasing micro brand that just can't seem to think out of that narrow window of making kind of trendy watches. It just seems so underwhelming for what Tudor has been and what it probably should be.
Yeah, I broadly agree with that. It's a tough position to be in, especially because if Rolex creates something new, and I'd even argue over the past couple of years that Rolex has been more innovative than Tudor, between the Lamp Dweller, the 1908, all of these, as well as some really innovative new movement tech. There's actual more new novelty these days coming from Rolex. But Rolex now is more confident that if Rolex creates something new, it will have demand by virtue of being a Rolex. And yes, Tudor is starting to occupy a market space where it is kind of a hype brand in its own way, but just because it's a new Tudor does not make it desirable in the same way that even ugly modern Rolex, if it gets released, it gets sold out. Period.
So the thing that's missing there has been marketing. Yes, Tudor has to tell the world why you want a Tudor, yet they haven't done that. Arguably, Rolex still spends in its kind of funny ways, but Rolex is also not spending a lot of money telling you why you should want a Rolex. It's letting the market do that for it, and it's lucky that there's people doing it. But you do not have the critical mass of motivated dealers trying to push Tudor in the way that they've been trying to push Rolex. So Tudor, in a very real sense, is selling itself short by pretending it does not have resources to market itself and to make itself more popular. And then I'm not sure what the internal state is, but I think the lack of activity there is reflective of their lack of movement, and that's just a bad cycle. If they don't kickstart the system, if they don't juice the engine, then they're not going to start to get movement in the market. And despite the fact that they have, honestly, unlimited money, I hate to say it, but they almost have unlimited money to do this stuff, they're not doing it. And I don't understand why from the company that always talks so big about reinvesting in itself.
Yeah, what it feels like, again, from the outside looking in, but as somebody who has quite a bit of marketing and PR experience, is that the Tudor PR department, especially marketing, is a little bit different because they do a lot with, celebrity marketing and motorsports these days. But especially with public relations, the people that are running Tudor's PR are from Big Daddy Rolex. They're, corporate that have been moved over. And so the leadership, whether or not Tudor needs something different, is still operating on a Rolex thought model of we are Tudor and therefore people should care. That works for Rolex. It doesn't necessarily work for Tudor. But until there's sort of a leadership change, until there's a new generation of executives making those decisions at Tudor, or at the very least until they have a come to Jesus moment, it's difficult for brand communications to really emphasize, yeah, we do need to tell these stories, and we can't rely on the market to just sell the watches without any effort.
Okay, I believe that. And we know the people, for the most part, that run Tudor, and it's a very pleasant group of people, all very friendly, nice people, but I wouldn't say they're imbued with a lot of imagination or rock the boat-ism, so to say. And you're right. They're not going to sit there and push. They're just going to be like, well, this seems comfy enough. If daddy upstairs wants no activity, then daddy shall have no activity. Okay, so that's a little bit about Tudor. Again, a brand we like that makes a qualitatively nice product. But again, from a design and marketing perspective, I'll just use Ripley's term again. It's languishing. So for our last few minutes, we're going to...
Well, and I think the important thing to mention is that none of us would have this sentiment if we weren't fans of the brand and genuinely believed that they could wow us more. I think it sounds... It sounds like we're speaking negatively of the brand, but I really don't think that's the case. It's seeing an enormous amount of potential, not just financially, but in terms of the archives, the technology that they have available to them, and the fact that they can experiment more, both in terms of their products and marketing, without the risk of going out of business because they've got that Rolex backing. So this comes from a place of love when I say that I feel like they're stuck or have a direction, because I really, really want to see this as a fun and innovative brand that does all the cool stuff that Rolex is too proud and old and tenured to do themselves. So fingers crossed for the future, but this really comes from the most positive place when I say that I'm kind of bored with what they're doing.
Don't hate us, Tudor.
Oh, no. I mean, I've collected Tudor for a lot of years. I genuinely love this brand, and I would love to see it do more.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when I was playing sports. It's when your coach stops yelling at you, that's when you should be worried. If he's yelling at you, that he's still vested. He's not pulling you out of the game, So it's kind of like that. The brands that if I don't think they can do better, we're just not going to bring them up. They're trying their hardest and it's subpar. But this is, Tudor does cool stuff, and you see these glimpses of brilliance where it's like, oh, wow. Okay, why couldn't we just start pulling that thread a little more and see where we end up with that?
We definitely gave him a lot of coverage over the last year, so there's no lack of love for Tudor on the aBlogtoWatch pages. Okay, we're nearly out of time, and I wanted to get to a reader-submitted question. We like these, and we're probably going to take this question far too seriously, but it's a topic which is somewhat near and dear to my heart. It's actually a series of questions, so I'll try to consolidate it. This is from Sebastian. We didn't get to this last week, so let's talk about this. The question is, what watch would Mr. House wear? Was Mr. House? Well, Mr. House from the Fallout universe. There is the television series now in its second season on Amazon, which is quite well done and I enjoy. And 7 years ago, I, in collaboration with Laco and Matt Smith Johnson, came out with a watch that was inspired by the Fallout universe, which is one of the favorite things that I've ever done. We called it the Laco Radox. And what I was trying to do was imagine a backup timepiece that a character might be wearing when their Pip-Boy, which is a wrist-worn computer from the entertainment franchise, might break. What would their backup timepiece be? This is a post-apocalyptic irradiated wasteland, so radiation is a big deal. And this was a great limited edition product that we had made. It was fun to do, pre-worn dial, pre-worn case and strap, interesting stuff. I'd love to do another one of these. I keep thinking about what brand would be good for that, who would be open-minded to it. I've always had some talks, and I thought now that these shows are back in the mix, I've been thinking of a lot of brands. Shinola is one that comes to mind. I don't know why. I just think like a little twist on some of their designs. Their branding kind of looks like it fits in that world. So let's get back to the question, and then he asks, he's very specific, pre-cryonic chamber. So I guess there's a point where he's frozen. So I guess this is...
So we're not talking about Raisin Mr. House from the end of New Vegas.
Yeah, we're talking about the human-looking Mr. House. And I have to say, something along the lines of an Accutron seems to kind of make sense. I don't know why that comes to mind, or maybe like a Hamilton Ventura,
Yeah,
that type of generation.
It almost has to be the Ventura.
The Ventura?
That is the peak of 50s Americana
The bomb
high-tech.
designer watch. That was designed by a bomb designer.
Richard Arbeth.
Yeah. So that, something like that, hopefully, a slightly interesting version of that. But I think his questions go deeper. He wants to know, he wants to know, let's see, what else does he wants to see here? He's very, very interested. He wanted to make sure that I brought people's attention to the Laco, because I remember, it's true that many people might not remember it. And he also likes what he calls the technologically advanced 50s style, which I was sort of always into. So he has a couple of interesting questions here and again, this is a fantasy world. So if we can't have a real answer, I'm sorry. What would you have to make a bund strap out of to prevent radiation poisoning from an irradiated watch case? I'm not a radiation scientist here, but the presumption is if your watch case is irradiated metal, could you have a strap to protect yourself from the radiation? I'm going to go with a big I don't know. It seems...
The things they put on you when you're getting an X-ray, that big, thick lead blanket.
Lead curtain there.
Yeah.
Like those old Breitling metal bracelets.
You know,
make
the
it out
Hublot, like the Arctic bund, like it's the sheepskin bund like that, but with lead blanket instead of sheepskin.
So lead with kind of a fuzzy outer covering, so it's not lead on skin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like an X-ray jacket watch strap.
I mean, you could have like the fun Fallout answer to this too. I think if it was like Deathclaw skin, you'd probably get away with it. But
do they just absorb radiation, or are they resistant to it? Maybe they just don't care.
I don't know enough. Yeah, I feel like they really aren't bothered.
It's like Godzilla. He feeds on it at a certain point.
Okay, so yeah, he wants to know a radiation resistant bund strap, and if you're a small supplier out there looking for a market segment, the people who want radiation resistant bund straps, you might want to develop something for them. The second question, and what complications would make the most sense in a world without accurately synchronized time, or Mobius 9010? I'm not sure what Mobius 9010 is. Maybe that's from the game, but. I guess you'd have to have your own portable atomic clock system on you. Yeah.
And it's Fallout, so that's totally possible.
Wait, a really accurate moon phase, because presumably that's going to be kind of the one constant. You're not really sure what day or how the daylight savings time changed, whatever, as you pass around. But the astronomical stuff would be constant, and you're not going to want to set it a lot. So even if you had a really good mechanical watch, that -4 +6 will drift a bit. But at least the moon would be right for 1,000 whatever years or whatever these like Sarpaneva ones are doing.
At that point, yeah, the Fallout Apocalypse watch, here's the hot take, is the IWC Eternal Calendar.
You think so?
I mean, if you can keep the thing running, yeah, it would be able to track all that accurately.
I think it's the Jeff Bezos 10,000 year clock.
The thing in the mountain?
Yeah, which I don't know this. I wrote about this in 2018 when it was in some phase. I don't know what the deal is right now, almost a decade later. I want to know what's going on with this. But for those who don't know,
can we visit this? If he listens, I would love to. I'd love to tour this factory. Like we could. I'd love
Coming
to.
back to the James Bond discussion, this 1,000% is a Dr. Evil style lair burrowed into the side of a mountain.
They called it the clock of the long now. Now, the Fallout world only takes place a few hundred years in the future, so clearly the 10,000-year clock would still be in operation. All you got to do is make your way through what I'm guessing is a lot of death claws and get into the side of the mountain. This literally feels like a place you could visit in the Fallout universe.
Yeah.
And there'll be probably an animatronic Jeff Bezos there, or his brain in some type of robot, similar to Mr. House. and he will be there to tell you the time. So you need to just wait. Find Bezos's mountain and ask the AI version of Bezos what time it is, and he'll tell you the accurate time. I think that's the best answer.
Is this what you do when you're bored with the piece uniques and the subscription type of things, like the Le Cabinotier custom pieces? You're like, you know what? I've had a lot of watches and clocks built for me. What if I built inside of a mountain a giant clock that was only made for me and only I could visit it because you can't transport it? Like, did he ever elaborate on what was the impetus for this grand venture?
I still feel that when this thing opens, if they want press coverage, we're going to be amongst the small list of people who would even understand any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm still waiting for the invitation. I don't think it's ready yet. I don't know they're in a rush. The thing that excited me the most is that they hired a bunch of ex-Disney, what were they called?
Oh, Imagineers?
The Imagineers, yeah, because they understand that intersection between performance art and actual, plausibility and things like that. You know, growing up, going to a lot of those Disney rides and things like that. Those are the people to combine functionality and experience. So, like, this is, screw going to like Patek or Vacheron and having them make you a watch. This is the ultimate, screw the complicated pocket watch. I'm making something in the side of a mountain.
Yeah.
So Bezos, I commend your competitiveness. I think that's what we need as the next step. We need to check in on this project, reach out to them. I have no idea, but they have to have had some major progress in the last 8 years, right? There's got to be some.
Oh,
he can't be spending all his time on Blue
I'd kill to go to this, and I also think maybe the Imagineers that he hired should go talk to IWC, because a 10,000-year service interval on this clock is bonkers. And if we could get that with the eternal calendar, buddy, there you go. Set. That's the forever piece. Yeah. So I don't know what's in the water at Disney, but if it yields a 10,000-year service interval, let's just keep pumping it in.
Okay, so that's the end of the show. We'll sign off saying thank you to Mr. Bezos for keeping our imaginations alive. We look forward to knowing what you are hiding in the side of the mountain. Hopefully it's a bunch of clockwork and parts. This has been our episode of aBlogtoWatch Weekly. Thank you so much. Listen to the Superlative Podcast. We'll see you all next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.